Hello AQA students, what a great video this is for you guys. Hot topic areas for paper 1. These are topic areas that you should weigh up in your revision. An extra 10% of your revision time devoted towards these topic areas, whereby if they come up in exams this year, you're laughing. You can write great essays, you can score very high marks. But we're not disregarding other parts of the course. We're revising everything so that even if these topic areas don't feature significantly, it's okay. Whatever questions come up, you can still answer them really well and write great essays. But these topic areas certainly are worth weighing up. So let's dive in. What's topic area number 1? Make sure you revise behavioral economics really well. Give it proper weight in your revision. Know with behavioral economics, there are two sides to it. You need to know, first of all, your limits to rationality, but then you need to know your behavioral policies, your nudge policies. When these questions come up, they're often linked to market failure context. They can come up by themselves and you just have to answer questions purely about behavioral ideas. That can happen. But often if you're getting big 25 markers from behavioral economics, they're often tied to market failures and dealing with market failures. So when it comes to behavioral ideas, limits to rationality, make sure you revise them whereby you can also explain why market failures are occurring, but also your behavioral policies, make sure you can apply them to solving various market failures. My advice to you, make up random context, make up random market failures, and just apply behavioral ideas to fixing them. You might talk about gambling, you might talk about recycling, you might talk about encouraging healthy eating or discouraging fatty food or fast food consumption. You might talk about vaping, whatever. Just make up examples and apply behavioral ideas as to why the market failure might be occurring and potential behavioral policies to fix it. Speaking of market failure, it's always a major topic area. It's always an area that you need to revise well. So always with market failure, revise in context, because often when these questions come up, it's linked to major context. So let's talk about major contexts that are happening globally and in the UK with market failure. These might come up in your exam this year. First of all, the rise of vaping, especially among younger people, and how vaping is a substitute to traditional cigarette consumption, but there's a lot of imperfect information. So in that regard, vaping could be argued to be a demerit good. The negative effects of consuming vapes for the individuals, there are wider negative externalities to that as well, but also to the disposal of vapes, the environmental market failure associated with their disposal. In the UK, massive environmental market failure of water companies dumping raw sewage into our rivers, oceans and lakes. Know a bit about that. The rise of online gambling is massive, especially amongst younger people. Again, how it becomes addictive, how that in itself is a demerit good, massive negative externalities linked to that. Sticking with negative externalities, climate change is always a ginormous market failure. In the UK, the big debate is to whether we need a carbon tax or not. Many other countries in the world have it to try and reduce CO2 emissions and target industries that are very heavy polluters. The big discussion is whether we need one. So just know pros and cons or the impacts of the potential carbon tax in the UK. On the positive externality side, massive market failures in the UK are that with childcare and dentistry, whether state provision is doing its job in those two areas, whether there needs to be other policies to make childcare more affordable, to make sure that people can access affordable dental care. Speaking of state provision, we can also worry about public good provision, in particular flood defences, and whether it's actually working for adequate flood defence protection. And then always you can look at housing market inequities in the UK, but also in the developed world more generally, how house prices are just simply becoming unaffordable for most people, especially for first-time buyers, for those on low incomes, just house prices so unaffordable. But also since COVID, the rental market has gone berserk. Even rents now are unaffordable or taking too much of a chunk of individual salaries. So in all these cases, know what's at the heart of the market failure, and then you can apply policy solutions. Even if it's not one of these themes that come up, you're ready, you can then apply the same practice, the same idea to whatever the context actually is in the exam. But remember what I said first, behavioral economics. That's the area to weigh up alongside traditional market failure context. Next, know your market structures well. Absolutely. I've got my eye on perfect competition this year or very highly competitive markets, but also monopoly. Know these two extremely well. But then you've got sub-branches like price discrimination, big chance that can feature, and natural monopoly. So in all these cases, be able to discuss consequences, i.e. the pros and cons of all of these market structures or the sub-branches, ready to answer a big 25 marker if it comes up. And then a topic area that links very strongly to market structures is competition policy, specifically the regulation side or the intervention side of competition policy. There is a major theme in the UK and across the EU that is windfall taxation. There is a windfall tax on tech firms and their revenue, given their huge monopoly abuse in the UK and in the EU. But more recently, there is now a windfall tax on energy firms and their profits. Not the retailers, the manufacturers. Think Shell and BP, Chevron, Exxon. These kind of companies have a windfall tax imposed on their profits. In the UK, we've extended that levy all the way to 2029. So that's an interesting theme that examiners might latch onto. But outside of competition policy is the topic area of nationalisation. Again, a big discussion point in the UK. If the Labour Party win the election later this year, they want to nationalise a wide variety of industries, even setting up a nationalised green energy company. So the topic area of nationalisation is heavily talked about. Just know the pros and cons there, but just widely. Competition policy, maybe a question tied to market structures is likely. Potentially in Section A, revise this topic area very well and weigh it up. Always good to know your business objectives well. It's a very common 25 mark area, so be able to analyze various objectives, be able to evaluate them is my advice to you in your revision. But also within this kind of topic area, it's the rise of business closures during COVID times, yes, but in the aftermath because of massive energy price shocks, because of generally significant rises in cost of production for firms, a lot of firms not able to survive given those massive cost pressures, a lot of businesses going bust and shutting down. So knowing the shutdown condition, discussing whether there is a need for government intervention to prevent this or to help businesses out could be a very interesting question if it comes up. Then huge is labour market. You need to be revising labour market. Well, it's a technical area of the course, but it's a fascinating area of the course. It's quite easy to cover. There are videos on the channel to guide you, but we know labour market will be coming up. And often when it comes up, it's linked to major themes in the UK economy. There are some big themes examiners might latch onto. For example, regional pay gaps in the UK, how wage growth in the south, in London and surrounding areas is quite strong, quite high, much higher than it is in the Midlands and then in the north. They're the regional wage differentials we have in the UK. So maybe a question where you have to explain why there is a regional wage gap in the UK, but then also potential policy remedies for that wage differential. But also recently we've had labour shortages, we've had massive strikes organised by trade unions. Being able to discuss the impacts of those strikes as well could be an interesting question if it comes up. So just know labour markets well, your basic theory, but also get into some of these themes and understand the links to labour market theory from those themes. Potential essays are there for you. And then we go to inequality. Income and wealth inequality. I would focus on the consequences of both income and wealth inequality. If you're revising the topic area of policies to reduce inequality, minimum wage rise is a very interesting area because the last couple of years, minimum wages have gone up by a lot, by around 10% in both years, which is very significant. We in the UK have one of the highest minimum wages in the world at the moment. So, a question just on minimum wage could easily feature, being able to discuss the impacts of the minimum wage, but also whether further rises are necessary, whether it's time to stop raising the minimum wage, just know minimum wage well. And lastly, where AQA tend to be going these days for 15 markers is extremely narrow topic areas. For example, diagrams for indirect tax, for subsidy, minimum, maximum prices, not in a market failure setting, just generally speaking, knowing their diagrams, but also PPF curves, diagrams that link to elasticity. These are very narrow areas of the course, but AQA taking those small, narrow areas and are asking a lot of 15 markers about them. So just make sure you're not under revising what are quite small topic areas, because AQA seem to be going 15 markers in those ways. And if you are under revising those, maybe there's a beautiful 25 marker in section B that follows. But if you don't actually have the knowledge to answer the 15, you can't choose it. So that little area of the course, your diagrams in particular, just make sure you're revising them all just in case a 15 marker comes about any of those. So there you have it, AQA students, hot topic areas of paper 1, topic areas to weigh up in your revision. An extra bit of time towards these topic areas is in your interest, but you're also revising all the other topic areas in the course too, so that no matter what comes up, you're good to go. You can write great essays. There's a lot more to come in helping you revise and prepare for these exams. So great you've watched this video. Stay tuned for a lot more. They're all going to be in my revision for 2024 exams playlist. Watch them all. I can't wait to see you in future videos. Thanks for watching this one.